ABC Kinderteach presents Farmhouse, written by Sophie Blackall. Over a hill and at the end of a road, by a glittering, sparkling from the light, stream that twists and turns, stands a house where 12 children were born and raised. That's a lot. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, where they learned to crawl in the short front hall, where they posed arranged on the wooden stairs and were measured with marks over the years. So here they are getting their picture taken. Sometimes people take a measurement of their kids every year and they put a little mark on the wall, and then they say, oh, look at how much you've grown between this year and next year. Where they carved potatoes and dipped them in paint to pattern the walls, and they're putting patterns on the walls, with flowers and leaves, and painted the cat, about which they lied. So what they are doing here is they take a potato and then they make a little design on it, and then they put some ink on it, and then they put it on the wall to make a pattern. And here's some patterns that people have made with potatoes. And they say that they painted the cat. They should not have painted the cat. And see, here's the cat, and the cat's not happy about having some green paint put on it. But they're going to get in trouble for that because it's not very nice. For which they were scolded, told not to do, and maybe they cried, and then were enfolded, given a hug, in forgiving arms in the serious room where the organ was played and speeches were made. But if they weren't even sorry at all, they were sent to their rooms. So some of the kids were sorry and some of the kids were not, so they were sent to their rooms until they could be sorry, maybe. Where they pored over, looked at for a long time, books about planets and stars, then climbed into beds where they dreamed of Mars, that's a planet a long ways away, or they dreamed of cats or the distant sea, like an ocean that is far away. So here they are reading books, they're thinking about and dreaming about many different things, but they all share this room. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the kids are sharing the same room. And whispered secrets, played truth or dare. That's a game where you must either answer a question honestly or truthfully, or do something silly like jump on one foot for a minute. And lost their teeth and brushed their hair. She's brushing her hair. Where they kept collections of tin toy cars and feathers and bones and movie stars. This looks like a bone collection here. Where they hung prize ribbons. There's a prize ribbon there, and there's one there, for champion cows, there's a cow, that lived in the barn behind the house, and were milked twice a day, no matter the weather, at dawn and at dusk, nearly dark out, by one child or another, who shivered and grumbled, complained in a grouchy way, as they crossed the yard, or liked being alone with a flaming cloud, a cloud that looks red just because it's getting near the end of the day or at the beginning of the day, depending on the season, the day, and the child. So some of the kids did not like milking the cows, And some of the kids did. And they fed the calves and mucked out stalls. That just means cleaned out the places where the cows lived. That's mucking out right there. And forked the hay. And that's what she's doing right there. Into giant piles and fished for trout in the glittering stream, shiny with a sparkly light, that changed its shape from year to year. So here they're forking hay to feed the animals. Here's them mucking out the stalls, which means cleaning it out again. And they're feeding the calves. It looks like they're doing some stuff out in the field here. And walking home with their rods and flies. These are their rods, and the flies are just the little things they use that look like bugs to catch fish, but they're really not. They picked gnarled apples, twisted and not pretty apples, to turn into pies. Apple pies. And dragged in mud from the fields outside. So they shook the rug and scrubbed the floors and listened to their mother and did their chores and set the table. So they're shaking out this rug because it gets dirty. They're helping making apple pie here. Looks like they're cooking the fish, getting dinner ready, setting out the table and glasses. Looks like this girl's cleaning the floor. Everybody seems to have a job. And bowed their heads and dished up soup and tore up bread and took turns tending the youngest one, or taking care of, who lay with a fever and a spotted tongue. So this is the baby who's really, really sick. And as they watched, they darned their socks, which means fixed the holes in, and sewed on buttons that once were shells in the faraway sea that they've never seen. And they waited for spring, which eventually came, as it did every year, with blossoms, flowers on a tree or bush, and rain, which leaked through the holes that had grown in the roof, collecting in pools and pans and pails, staining the walls in the short front hall with the flowers and leaves and measures and marks. Measures and marks are marks on the wall or door that keep track of how kids are growing. So here is this girl darning or fixing socks. This boy is reading. Keep an eye on this one. This baby looks like it's in a bathtub that's in the kitchen because that's sometimes where they used to be. Looks like the father's bringing in wood. So everybody seems to be busy. And sometimes houses that are really old, if you don't fix the roofs, they leak. And so they put out little pans and buckets to catch the water that drips. From the children who all grew up in this house, who went off to school or to work on a farm, or to drive a truck or train as a nurse, or study the stars, or have babies themselves, until one day the youngest child, who was now quite old, took a last look around and picked up her case and opened the door. So all 12 kids went to do different things. And the last one, or the littlest one, finally grew up, and she decided it was time for her to leave to this old house. And stepped outside and into a car where her sister was waiting to drive to the sea, which they'd always, always wanted to see. So they're going to drive to the sea where they always wanted to go. And there's the old house, which is pretty old now. And the house gave a sigh, felt like it could finally rest, and slumped, which means bent over like it was tired, on the stones, which caused a slight lean in its beams, the wood that helped hold the house up, and its bones, all the parts of the house that keeps it together. So the door swung open to let in the breeze. So the door wouldn't shut like it was supposed to anymore because the house was so old, so rain and everything could get into the house now because nobody's living there. And welcome the rain that rotted the floor where a sapling or a young tree grew right next to the stove where the wallpaper peeled like onion skins. And here's the peeling wallpaper. And drifted about with the fallen leaves and the button that was once a shell in the sea. By the parlor organ. And a parlor is a nicer room where you can visit with friends. And an organ is like an electric piano that rattled with nuts put there by a squirrel with rather a fuss, which startled the swallows that fed on the moths that fluttered and flew all over the house. So this is what a swallow looks like. There was even a bear right there in the basement one year who slept there all winter until the spring, which was when I came and cut a path through prickly burdock, which is this, and nettles, which looks like this, and grass, and found what remained of the old farmhouse, where I filled my arms with wallpaper scraps and rain-soaked books and brittle, hard and crumbly, maps, and mud-caked dresses and handkerchiefs, and a button that was once a shell in the sea. And back at my desk I spread them all out and cherished, thought they were very special, my gifts from the falling down house. Then I sharpened my pencil and mixed some paint and dipped my brush and cut some shapes and began to imagine the things that took place. Took place where? Oh, in the house, right? In the home where 12 children were born and raised, where they ate and slept and worked and played and laughed and loved and grew quite old, where they'll live on now in this book that you hold, like your stories will, so long as they're told. So here's what their house looks like.